This is our inaugural YouTube streaming event. We are all making history together, so give yourselves a round of applause. Our topic tonight is the state of retail in Arlington. We all remember our favorite stores. It's part of the fabric of our community. It's part of the fabric of Arlington. Unfortunately, retail is a very fickle business where success and tough times are never very far apart. Things change, of course, and if, say, a large company were to move into Arlington, that would change everything. But as we await Amazon's decision on where it's to place HQ2, this is the problem when you write a speech 3 days before you have to give it. So as I was saying, retail in any environment is going to be multifaceted. You can ask 5 people what's going on, and you'll get 5 different answers of how things are going. It's like the parable of the blind people who find the elephant sleeping outside. One may encounter its leg and think it's a log. Another comes in, finds its ear, and thinks it's a giant leaf. Another will find its torso and think it's a wall. Another might find its tail and say, oh, it's a big rope. And another finds its trunk and says, I don't know what this is. They talk later. They all explain what they saw. They can't agree on what they encountered. And that's because they all experienced something different, and they can't put it all together. And that's how I see retail in Arlington, that everybody experiences something different. They're all correct, but from their perspective. So tonight we have 2 speakers who have very different perspectives, and will speak to what they experience on a daily basis. Our first speaker is Michael Stiefvater. He is the Commercial Development Specialist at Arlington Economic Development. AED is dedicated to preserving and enhancing an economically competitive and sustainable community, ours. His office provides technical assistance on development opportunities, monitors market conditions, and serves as a liaison between business community and the Arlington County government. Specifically, he tracks Arlington's retail market, builds relationships with retail brokerage community, and facilitates solutions to challenges affecting tenant occupancy. Ladies and gentlemen, Michael Stiefvater.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me if I talk from up here? No? All right. I guess I have to lean into it. All right. So again, thank you, Timon, for the... Pick it up. All right. All right. Sorry, a few technical difficulties. Thank you, Timon, for the kind introduction. Again, my name is Michael Stiefvater, and I'm here from Arlington Economic Development. Still can't hear me? Okay. So I'm here to talk about retail from the county's perspective and give kind of a macro level overview of the state of retail. So I'm going to go ahead and start. Retail, as Timon was mentioning, is something that we all experience on a daily basis. Every one of us goes out to shop. Every one of us goes out to dinner. So we really have a feel. Out of all the commercial industries, we're probably most in touch with retail, while it's a little more difficult to maybe understand the office market and what's going on there. So hopefully through this, my discussion today, I can provide kind of a bit of an overview of how the retail market works, what's going on at a national level, and how that's trickling down into Arlington, as well as then providing some of the resources and services that my office and my colleagues provide to the business community. I want to start with something a little fun and just get some audience participation. I would love for anyone just to throw it out. How many sit-down restaurants do you think currently operate within Arlington County? Honestly, those are fantastic guesses. I was expecting them to 220. So if you split your answers, you nailed it. Another one. Which commercial district or neighborhood do you think has the most retail square footage or concentration within it? Pentagon City? You are, I didn't mean to do that. You are correct. Pentagon City has 1.7 million square feet, predominantly thanks to the Fashion Center, Pentagon Row, and some other uses. And as Simone mentioned, the newest tenant, Arlington, Amazon, will be right there as well to enjoy and take advantage of that great amenity. So the first thing I want to get into on a more serious topic is just kind of what makes an attractive retail market. And sorry, the screen. And kind of what creates a strong neighborhood, what attracts businesses to the neighborhood, and what allows it to thrive. Most importantly, of course, is customers. Retail businesses can't survive without a strong customer base. They need people to come in and shop and dine, obviously. So what does a retailer look for when they're considering neighborhoods and considering specific properties? They want population, and this is Arlington specific. There's going to be different criteria if you're living in maybe a more suburban neighborhood. But for Arlington, they're looking for population density. They want households or a strong number of households within easy walking distance of their site. That's probably an obvious one. They also want to look at demographics. Depending on their business type, they're going to look at the age of the customers that live within the area. They're going to want to know their education level, as a lot of people think that a higher education then leads to higher spending, or perhaps it just meets their business model a little bit better. They also, of course, will look at income, which correlates there. Depending on the business, they might be more interested in a daytime or nighttime population, or perhaps both. For example, in Clairton, you're going to be looking for mostly a nightlife base, given there's a relatively small office market there. Whereas in Boston, Roslyn, or Crystal City, you're going to be supported by a strong daytime population, given the office concentrations there. Other key things they're looking for are convenient access, whether that's being close to a metro, having on-site parking. If you're serving families or an elder population, you're probably looking for on-site parking. If you're looking for millennials, you probably want to be near a metro stop or other high public transportation. And lastly, a lot of businesses want to be near others, so you're going to want to see maybe fitness users that will pair close to each other, or sit-down restaurants that will pair closer together. That may seem counterintuitive, but people like to either comparison shop and visit multiple places at once, or they might go grab a drink somewhere and have dinner next door. So you want to see tenants kind of cluster together. And then I want to talk about vacant space. I think that's a hot topic, and everyone will walk past a store in their neighborhood, and I'm sure you all have one that you drive past or walk past, and you go, why is that space still vacant? I think that on a daily basis, and I'm sure you do too. And while it certainly can just be due to the fact that the rent is high, and that does happen, I think that's the first answer everyone kind of jumps to, is that the rent in a specific neighborhood is just too high. And while there's usually a lot more going on beyond that, one thing is macroeconomics. So on a national level, e-commerce, Amazon, and other folks are clearly taking a bit of the market share. So that trickles down to the local level, and it may be beyond control of a specific business or landlord. Retail is highly competitive, and especially in Arlington. If you're not on the top of your game, you're not going to last very long. So certainly concepts that are maybe a little bit subpar or weren't planned out well, have a high likelihood of failure. The long lease structure requires a few things. Landlords are going to be patient in trying to find the right tenant, as they don't want to have turnover within a year or two and then have to go through the process all over again. And conversely, for the business, you're putting your life's investment and time into this. So, you want to be patient and find the right deal. So it can take a while for those two to line up, and a space can remain vacant for longer than I think everyone would like to see. Other items are, redevelopment can occur, so a property owner may, hold a space vacant for a while as they kind of plan for the future. And vacancy, while we all portray it as a negative, and we want an active use in there that's generating taxes for the county and serving the customer base, there are some positives that can be taken away. An owner may have been operating a business for 40 years and is ready to retire, and they might not have a child or someone else that's ready to take over the business. So that's their opportunity to exit, hopefully move to the beach and enjoy retirement. And it also allows new concepts to enter the market. Some restaurants may not be able to change with the times, and this kind of allows a new concept or a retailer that, let's say, I'm trying to think like a vacuum cleaner store. Maybe that's something now that's been replaced by other uses, and new concepts can come in and take over the space. This slide's a little tongue-in-cheek, but I want to talk about the national retail market. I think one word, if you've heard about retail in the past couple of years, the retail apocalypse is thrown around in almost every discussion. And the stores that are closing, you're hearing about Toys R Us, Sears, JCPenney, and others. Toys R Us and these other folks have all closed hundreds of stores around the country, and these are usually large box stores. So they're occupying a lot of the retail square footage that's out there. So that's kind of the national perception, is that retail is struggling on the whole. But I want to talk about kind of the reality behind that. While that's certainly true that those stores have suffered and are creating vacancies, there's more to the story than that, as there usually is. First, e-commerce has really changed the game, and we're seeing restructuring and reshuffling of the deck from that. While you can now go online and buy toys and shoes and other things like that, those retailers are facing struggles. And the ones that haven't adapted to the changing market, which are the majority of the ones on that past slide, they've gone by the wayside and are being replaced by new concepts. But it obviously will take time for the market to adjust and backfill that space. The second point I want to make is that the U.S. is the most retailed country in the world on a square foot per person basis. We're currently at about 23.5 square feet per person. The chart here shows the top 5. The second highest is Canada, and even the number 5 country in the world is Japan, and we're about 6 times the amount of retail square footage to Japan. So clearly, as e-commerce comes in, there will probably be a right sizing of what the appropriate amount of retail space is in this country. And both of those items are then leading to retailers being very selective about their sites, which bodes well for Arlington, as this is one of the best retail markets in the country for brands to establish themselves in, or new concepts to try out and see if they want to roll out throughout the country. So Arlington's well positioned, but for secondary or tertiary markets, retailers may be cautious about locating there. And then as far as trends go, the 3 largest currently are focused on experience, as Amazon hasn't figured out how to replace that yet. Unique local concepts, and people are very focused on wellness, whether that's going to actual fitness uses or other retailers that follow along with that. I want to compare the retail vacancy for you and just kind of tell you how Arlington's doing. On a national level, the retail vacancy is around 10.2%. Based on the numbers I've compiled since starting the job, we're at about 5.55%, so around half the retail vacancy of the country. By any measure, we're doing very well on that macro level. Certainly, there's individual stories that will have a different perspective on that, but just from an overall basis, the retail market here is very strong. This next slide is going to have a different number. This slide is the numbers I've compiled and I feel most comfortable with. But I did want to also then compare us with the region, as Timon had asked me to do this. And this slide's a little funky, but this is a commercial real estate database that tracks numbers nationally. So they're a little different than mine, but Arlington still comes out near the top of the region with a 2.4% vacancy. I think this is lower than the actual just based on how they compile their numbers, but nonetheless, the trend line is probably accurate. And I think it's Fairfax County that's just below us at like 2.3%, but nonetheless, Arlington's again doing very well within the region too. I think I'm running out of time and I took too long on those first slides. But Arlington as a whole has about 7 million square feet of retail space, along with another 300,000 square feet that's currently under construction, and another 360 that's under renovation, which includes Ballston Quarter primarily, which is the new reincarnation of the Ballston Mall. And as I mentioned earlier, the nation is over-retailed at about 23 or 24 square feet per person. Arlington is even higher at 30 square feet per person, probably primarily due to the fashion center, which does attract a lot of visitors from the region as well as national and international travelers. So that's part of why that number is so high, but Arlington does have quite a bit of retail. And the ongoing trends that we're seeing are experiential uses again, fitness and food, and just more food. 63% of the retail businesses that have opened in Arlington in 2018 are food related, whether that's sit-down restaurants, fast casual restaurants, or things like a Starbucks. So that's really where the trends are going. I'm going to skip that slide due to time. My last bit that I wanted to really get into is just kind of what the county does in relation to retail. Within our office, the two ladies photoed there are Tara and Lourdes. They are our biz launch team. They are absolutely fantastic, and they've been working for the county for several years. And the biz launch team works directly with small business owners. They are running constant seminars, one-on-one meetings, reviewing business plans, helping people with their taxes. So we really recommend any small business owner, if you know of any that maybe have questions about navigating either the local government or other regulations, their team is always ready to meet, and it's a free service provided by the county. I help more with site selection. So if a retailer comes to the county and is looking for a space, we try and help them find an appropriate site. We will run demographic reports for them. We will kind of provide them with a list of opportunities and just try and find the space that works best for them, and hopefully will allow them to succeed here in the county for a long time. Lastly, some of the things that we've created in the past year have been a set of retail profiles, which look at the 10 commercial districts throughout the county. These are on our website and have been distributed to commercial brokers, developers, and any business that comes into the county. So they're able to kind of get a quick overview of each market and decide, how they can start to narrow down the focus for where they want to be in the county. Additionally, we provide information on our website, which has, again, kind of a detailed information on each neighborhood. And I think I'm running out of time, so I won't get into this last slide, but I welcome all your questions after we have our next speaker.
Before I forget, I just want to announce that we probably will have a program on the effects of Amazon's HQ coming. We don't have that in our schedule yet, but we have a meeting coming up soon, and I'm sure it will come up. Our second speaker is Mr. Sasan Rashidi. He and his wife, Nasrin Rashidi, have had a lifelong passion for clothes. Sasan came to the United States in 1977, and Nasrin joined him 3 years later. They opened their first store before Nasrin came at Beacon Hill Mall in Alexandria. They opened their first store in Crystal City in 1985 and have been in Crystal City ever since in one form or another. At one point, they owned 5 stores in Crystal City. They're down to 1 now. It's called LA Moves. It's in the Crystal Arcade, and I mention this because it's my wife's favorite store, and maybe she'll get a discount for me saying that. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Sasan Rashidi.
Good evening. I'm very happy to be here tonight. My name is Sasan Rashidi, as Tuman kindly introduced me. I have been a small business owner in Arlington since 1985. We opened our first store in the underground in the Crystal City. Many of you may recall that's what it was named in those days. And it was one of the nicest and hottest spot to hang out. Over the years, as you can see, things have changed quite a bit. And I am one of the very few small businesses who has remained in Crystal City. Now, Arlington as a whole is a beautiful place, and I'm sure what Michael mentioned, there's a lot of places that are great. They're doing wonderful in retail. But since the 90s and later on in the late 90s, I would say, when the government started to move the Navy, the GSA, the other military offices, and the contractors followed. They left Crystal City, and unfortunately, the landlord, in my view, and many of my colleagues who most of them are not in business anymore, felt the landlord and the county failed the small businesses. We tried over the years to hang in there. We changed our way of doing business. We added services. We did stuff that they couldn't buy online. We kind of tried to keep the business together in many ways, but it was very difficult. Unfortunately, when all these government entities left, the landlord didn't do, which was in those days Vornado, didn't do much to help the small businesses. Even the Safeway, we had a drugstore, we had many restaurants, they all left. And there was a big vacancy in Crystal City for offices. And I'm hoping that now that Amazon is coming here, it's going to be great for the county. But as a small business, I welcome the Amazon team, especially their employees with which will have a positive impact in Crystal City. But being in business for 35 years in Arlington, it is a great win for the county, I believe. But we have to be very sensitive to what we do with the small businesses. In order to survive and not get wiped out by these big conglomerates like Amazon, small businesses should be given more attention and support from the county. I really feel the small businesses are, in many ways, they give character to the community. They give a sense of small businesses is really a way to make it different. We cannot be all, chain stores. As Michael mentioned, 63%. If you come to Crystal City now, you think you're walking into just restaurants. Before, there used to be a shoe shop, there used to be different coffee shops beside the Starbucks. There used to be a lingerie shop, men's clothing store. None of them exist now. There is a very handful, for every small business that went out, a chain store came in. And of course, some of them lasted for a while, some of them went out. But small businesses were really neglected in Crystal City. And I hope the county and the community is more sensitive to supporting the small businesses, because Amazon's and the trend has changed. We have to accept the fact. But it is very important to keep a balance. And I don't have much more to say. If you have any questions, please do ask later. Thank you.
Okay, so now I would like to invite Michael, Sasan, and his wife Nasrin up to our table over here for questions and answers. I'm sure you know the drill by now. We have until 9 o'clock to ask questions. Oh, please. We have a microphone. Oh, coming. Okay, sorry. Our microphone will be carried by Lynn Jewell, my former 7th grade math teacher. And in the great Arlington Committee of 100 tradition, please ask your question in the form of a question. So who'd like to go first? I'm sorry, please stand up if you can, announce your name, and speak into the microphone because you want to be heard on YouTube.
I actually can stand up sometimes. Chuck Morley. 40 years ago, I was training agents in Crystal City, and I used to go to the underground all the time, and it was a really vibrant place. A lot of businesses. And recently I was down there, and not so vibrant. So my question is, what can the county do to bring that place back? Because it really is a very unique opportunity place. I mean, it's a very nice space. And I just wonder what we can do to bring it back.
Can you hear me? No. That might be. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, there we go. Thank you for your question. I think one of the issues, at least, and I've been with the county for a year or so I don't have a whole lot of historical background, but I think in recent times, JBG Smith has taken over ownership of the underground and a lot of the surrounding properties. So I know one of the things that they've done, and this maybe has hurt the vibrancy in the past year or so, has been, they've been trying to figure out what to do with the underground themselves. I think they're not sure what the future holds for that area. So I know they've been signing, short-term leases with retailers, or people have been leaving and maybe they're not, filling the space yet because they're trying to plan for the future. So I think the county has created a sector plan for Crystal City that does guide its future. So there has been a lot of involvement from the community and stakeholders, and I believe from that sector plan, the responses were that the underground is an important asset to the community, and they do want that to stay there. I know JBG is at an event this morning about retail, and the thing they were discussing was actually that same topic and what to do with the underground. So I know they have two different views on it. One, retail really thrives on the street level and having people being able to walk by it. So they want to create a vibrant street plane, and maybe move some of that retail to the street level. But then they have community members and other folks that really value that. So I guess I'm kind of dancing around your question because I don't have a great answer, and it's going to involve a lot of people. But I would say, JBG Smith has done amazing retail throughout the region. So I think they're the right person and the right developer and owner to hopefully lead that forward. But I think there will be a lot of input from various parties that still needs to come before an answer's available.
Okay, next question in the back.
I'm Christine Montemat, and my question is a historical one, unfortunately. Comparison, what percentage of Arlington retail outlets are small business owned versus chains or national chains? And how is that different from, say, 20 years ago, or even 10 years ago?
I had a feeling that question was going to be asked tonight. Unfortunately, the county doesn't have any long-term data that I'm aware of. No. Looking back on it, and I was thinking about preparing it, going through all the stores and trying to figure out the current ratio. Yeah. It's a little difficult just given the way a lot of these stores are structured. A lot of folks that you think would, that started out locally owned, like say a Kava Grill, they now have national stores, or Sweet Green that started in the DC region, which was a mom and pop or really student run company. It's now expanded over the country. So there's these kind of hard dividing lines of when do you go from being a mom and pop to being a chain. So that is probably something I need to work on and kind of sit down, and it'll take a lot of time. There's quite a few stores in the county. But I would say anecdotally, I think a lot of people overestimate the amount of chains. 'Cause I think those are some of the bigger ones you see. But if you really look throughout the restaurants and other retail, it's I would guess 2/3 or higher is into local independents. I think almost the majority of restaurants you probably eat at on a regular basis are owned in the local community. And if you go down Columbia Pike or Lee Highway, the vast majority of those are going to be independents. Where you'd see more chains are in some of the malls, like Pentagon City, of course, is going to have a lot of chains or franchises. So.
I've been told that we've been joined by John Weistad, a county board member. John? On a personal note, John, thank you for all your service. Next question.
Timon, I have a question here, if I might. What would you guys say to the question before this about what the county could do to help you guys out?
Well, can you hear me? As many of you know, the county has given Amazon almost $1 billion incentive to come to Arlington. Not at the same rate, but I would like to see there be some focus on small businesses too, to help them, because they're the ones who are struggling. They don't have investors' money. They don't have. They're not public companies, so they're trying to run a small business and put food on the table for their family.
Well, I agree with Sasan, what he just said, but one of the things for me to be in the operation part in the store and seeing how Crystal City through years kind of changed, there was no walk-ins at all. So my view is there's not a reason for some of these residential, that there's a lot of people live there, to walk down in the mall and walk around. For instance, one of my thought was, if he had a nice grocery store inside the mall, that he could just get the elevator and go down and go, could be a Trader Joe or something that, so to me, it's not exciting that people cannot just come down there, just go to one store. If would be more stores that's needed, then would create more traffic of the people there.
In addition to that, I would suggest keeping a balance in a community. Just, if you come to Crystal City, you feel like you're just walking to a strip center that has only restaurants. There is no other services that are available, or there is not a good balance in what makes a community to stay there. They have to go get in their car and go elsewhere to do their shops, let's say to go to drugstores, to supermarkets, and many others.
Okay, next question from the back.
Joan Quinn, I want to add to what was just said. Crystal City is inward-looking, only restaurants that you see outside. And so the question would be, given modern technology, would it not be possible to highlight the variety of different stores that already exist within Crystal City by running something on the outside to draw people in some fashion? Anyhow, that's the question.
I don't have a specific answer to that. I don't have a specific answer to that one. I'm sure that with the new ownership that took over the property a year or so ago, I'm sure they're exploring every opportunity to try and bring more people in there. And to the last point that they were just talking about, I know that JBG, the owner, has just recently approved plans by the county to add in a movie theater. an unnamed grocery store to this point, but it'll probably be a small user of something as it was just named. As well as, within Crystal City, I know they're adding a bowling alley. So hopefully more, uses that draw people into the neighborhood and keep them there. Because really you want people to come to the neighborhood and, spend time and visit multiple stores, walk around and hopefully spend money there. So I think, Crystal City's on the right path for now.
Just to add on, there are some regulations regarding signage which may be pertinent to this issue. Next question.
I'm Marjorie Hobart. One of our retail stores that is not a small business that is important to me is the Costco at Pentagon City. And I understand that their site is to be redeveloped. I'm wondering, does the county have any plan to make a space available so that Costco can stay in the county?
To the best of my knowledge, the plans for that site are on the periphery. I know currently they're building, I believe it's about 400 housing units on one of the corners, and the plans that are approved for the future are similar. They're not replacing any of those major retailers. They're being built around them. So Costco, to the best of my knowledge, is not planned for removal at all. So hopefully that's good news for you and lots of other people.
Okay.
I am Chanda Chun. My question is for the Rashidis. I was wondering, over the years, what type of clientele has your stores attracted, and how has it changed over the years, like in age-wise, profession-wise, and how are you, in this day and age, attracting, getting your clientele?
About 7 or 8 years ago, we decided that just being a retail store was not going to cut it. So we added other services, such as storage for furs and outerwears like leather and shearling. And we brought in technicians to preserve and repair and restore natural skins. And so we took over a failing business that was in Washington. And we were fortunate that there was a space available, because there was so much vacancy there, that we got enough space to have a storage that is chilled or cool to store furs in the summertime. So that attracted and brought in a lot of customers from around the surrounding area, not just Arlington and Alexandria. So we kind of diverted our business from just being a retail store to more service-oriented. And I be very honest with you, that's one of the reasons we are the very few survivors over there, because retail is, even for on a larger scale that Michael mentioned, even Sears and big department stores are losing ground, and they're, folding. It's most online business. So our main customers are our middle-aged, professional, and elderly people. The younger millennials are not used to coming to our businesses because they do all their shopping online. So basically, we are becoming more service-oriented, and that's the reason we are still in business.
Scott.
It's like a track meet with the baton. Hi, I'm Scott Pedowitz. My neighborhood of Clarendon and Courthouse has a number of large sites that previously housed restaurants that didn't really have a good go. We've started to see adaptive use of that. I think one's a fitness center, one's now a nonprofit gallery. My question is, how is Arlington County looking at some of these spaces that have had trouble working and helping them readapt into other concepts that might be more flexible or more profitable in the long run?
Within Clarendon specifically, I can think of a few of the spaces you're talking about, and you're right. One is currently being utilized by a nonprofit arts committee temporarily. I think one of the things for those larger spaces that the developers have realized is that large restaurants that are 7 to 10,000 square feet are very difficult to fill on a nightly basis. So we're seeing a lot of restaurants that are smaller now, and maybe half that size. So I know 1 or 2 of those vacancies, the landlord is planning on dividing them up into 2 spaces rather than 1 large one, and we'll eventually hopefully find tenants for those. And the others, what the county's doing is is being flexible, allowing flexibility. So that's, I guess, what the county can do in that, is allowing uses that maybe are non-traditional retail. A few years ago, some of my colleagues worked on a retail plan for the county that allowed some retail equivalents into uses such as, ground floor, either fitness or some services into spaces that previously were only zoned for, restaurants. So I think allowing new uses or different uses into that space is key, and kind of just being flexible and allowing the market to take shape as it goes.
Charlie.
Yeah, I'm Charlie Clark. Michael, could you tell us a little bit about the secrecy around the Amazon deal and how you got the final word and what your instructions on how to not reveal anything at the wrong time? I'd love to hear it.
I'm not the right person. We have a large office, and I was not involved in any form. I think I wrote 1 sentence about retail in Arlington, and from what I saw, it wasn't included in the final proposal. So either it wasn't very good or it just wasn't relevant. I found out it the same as everyone else. I think I heard it on NPR when I was driving in Tuesday morning. I'm sure my colleagues have a different story, but as far as a lot of our staff, we found out just like everybody else.
Okay. In the back?
I'm Catherine Scruggs, and my question is, what are the secrets, or how do you become very successful even with a small business? And I'm thinking of the Fedorchik brothers and how they started with Liberty Tavern, and then it became Northside Social, and then it was, in other words, they didn't have a failing business. And they've expanded to 2 locations in Falls Church. So is this just luck, or is there a way that the county can help businesses achieve what the Fedorchiks have?
I think a little bit of luck certainly goes into it, but I haven't met them personally, but I've eaten at the restaurants, I'm sure as many of you have. I guess what the recipe is they realize who their customer base is. They provided, obviously, venues that people love. They're great at all times of day. They're not reliant on just, maybe a Friday night crowd of going out and drinking. They're great for lunch, brunch. They meet their community's need, and that's kind of, I guess, a key component of a successful business is, knowing your customer and serving them. Other things need to be, I assume they just have, great managers and great staff. So that kind of runs down from the ownership, and, they probably just have gained a lot of experience in each venue and, know how to make it work. As far as how the county can help, that's where my Biz Launch colleagues come in. They work with people from when the concept first enters their mind into getting them through opening and expanding. So we really encourage people to take advantage of those free resources. We have some experts. The person that opened South Moon Under is one of the counselors there. So there's these great resources that people may not be aware of, but we try to, from now, publicize them as much as possible and have people really, have a solid plan before they open, and hopefully not get into trouble.
Could we hear the secrets again from the real owners here?
To really taking a small business to the next level, it requires financial, planning, and also personnel planning and all of that. And some people would really enjoy keeping it a small business to keep a balance in their life with family, with their personal life. So, but for us, we really saw it coming, and we saw the changes that was very, very obvious. So we try to adjust and see what the need of the community is and try to be more on a personal level of service to our customers rather than, having a customer as a number like in a department store or online that one has no clue what the customer wants or what their needs are. So we try to be more of service oriented, and that was a niche that we found in our business, so that was different from the big online businesses and department stores.
Okay. Next question. Over here.
Hi, I'm Gail Dennis. I have observed that there is a practice among Arlington commercial landlords where they will give somebody a business a lease for maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years, maybe 3 months. And at the end of that period, after the business is established, all of a sudden the lease comes up for renewal. And they say, well, you can't renew at the price this, you've got to renew it twice as much. And they put the business, and it puts the business out because they can't afford the new rent. It puts the business out, it's earning money on which there's taxes in Arlington. And then they proceed to leave the building vacant for years at a time. The worst of these is the Alpine restaurant on Lee Highway that you may or may not be familiar with. And I wondered what you're doing in economic development to discourage this horrible practice that is putting these hard-working, serious people that are trying to serve their communities out of business. Thank you.
That's a good question with a probably a difficult answer. That certainly does happen. Landlords see. There was at the event this morning. They were talking about that as well. Busboys and Poets. I think their owner was discussing it. They were one of the first people to go into a neighborhood in D.C. And then when their lease came up in 10 years, the owner wanted to increase the rent by I think 30 or 40%, and they couldn't afford it, so they moved out. So you do see that where people take a risk and kind of pioneer a neighborhood, and they're not rewarded for it in the end. As far as what the county's doing, it's difficult. Private landlords are able to, it's an open market. The county doesn't dictate anything to do with commercial leases. That's left up to the landlord and the business to negotiate. I think the best thing we can do from our office is to work with small business owners to prepare for that. To make sure they're signing leases at the forefront that maybe have extended clauses that allow them to renew at different rates, and just make sure they're being successful. But that's a difficult thing for a government to control, and I think it's a problem nationwide, for better or worse.
Okay, next question.
Duke Banks. After hearing this exchange, this is, I guess, more from Michael, not to put you on the spot, but I think one of the things is, is economic development considered possibly creating a task force or something to address the issues of small businesses that have been brought out here effectively, so as to preserve some of the existing businesses? I remember Clarendon, all the unique businesses there that effectively have moved out, and so what can we do to preserve what we have? Thinking as an example in Westover, how to preserve heirs in the Westover market, and in other areas, because sometimes some of these redevelopments, the old long-time established businesses, small business and medium-sized businesses, at the end of the day, are not here with us, when the development occurs.
Since I've started, there has not been discussion of a task force. I think our Economic Development Commission that's comes out of our office and has members. I know they had a task force several years ago that looked at retail. I think 7 to 10 years ago. There hasn't been any discussion, but that's certainly a worthwhile thought, and I think something I can discuss with my colleagues. I think that's certainly a good issue.
Well, let's give Michael a break. Does anyone have a question for the Rashidis? No, over here.
You mentioned, excuse me, my name is John Quinn. You mentioned at the outset of your presentation that Amazon was getting a lot of money from the state and county, and you indicated that you could benefit from getting your pro rata share. Could you actually give us some ideas about how you think the county could help you and small businesses generally? And I parenthetically might indicate that I at least have a bias in favor of small locally owned businesses because you all stay, and it's a lot easier and more fun, more interesting to do business with somebody that you've been doing business with for some time. The other question is for Michael, and that is, can the county do what this gentleman says he needs for the county to do to provide help and incentives?
Well, I can only tell you, this nice lady just mentioned what happened to a small business in dealing with the landlord when the lease was coming up. A small business does not have the leverage as companies that are conglomerate. And I think it would be, I don't know how, but it has to be a way that at least the county would suggest that in a place like Clarendon or Crystal City, there be a balance of small businesses, services, and maybe major department stores or chain stores. But for a small business to sustain or all of a sudden have their lease double, it's suicidal. They cannot survive. Whereas Amazon can come in with any price or or they can dictate to the county or to the landlord what they want to do. So as a small business, we don't have that leverage. And so the playing field is very unfair. So maybe that Michael or the county can think of a way, because it's really very difficult for me to be sitting on one side and try to judge, others. So
I guess the first thing I would say is I am in no position at all to say whether or not the county would be able to do something of that nature. That'd certainly be a discussion that would need to be taken up by the county board and funneled down through there. There are, that said, there are programs around the country, and I've implemented them before in different jurisdictions I've worked in that do help small businesses. So there are different ways to do that. Some counties, implement tenant improvement grants to help businesses, with making repairs or improve their business. But you have to always weigh that against other responsibilities of the county. And I know the county's in currently a tough budget situation. But that would be something that need to be discussed at the county board level and vetted through different procedures there.
Anybody else? Oh. Sure.
What happened to Boston Common? What's going on there now? Are the problems that have existed for a long time being solved, and if so, on what time scale?
We certainly hope they're going to be very successful. They are slated to open their first set of stores, I believe, tomorrow. There's been a few delays, but I think they are planning to open, I'm not sure the exact number, but a dozen or so of their first tenants are going to open tomorrow. And they'll be doing rolling occupancy through the next 6 months or so. They're doing very well. They've leased the majority of the site. They have some exciting tenants that are going to be moving in there. It looks great, and I think everyone in the neighborhood's been, as you I think it's alluded to, highly anticipating what it's going to look like and how it'll work out. So I think we'll see a lot of movement over the next 6 months there.
Okay, well, that's all the time we have.
Not 9 yet. We have a couple more questions here.
Well, we're being
whatever.
broadcast this time, so
Okay.
unfortunately we have a hard stop. That's all the time we have. Please keep your seats for a couple of minutes while I go through a few things. First of all, I'd like to give a big thank you to our 3 guests. Speaking for myself, I'm smarter about retail now because of the 3 of you, so thank you very much. We hope you can attend next month. We will be discussing the possible ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment. We will have Julia Tanner, who advocates for it, and Senator Barbara Favola to speak of its the prospects of its passage. I'd also like to, you can make reservations at where else? www.arlingtoncommittee100.org. I'd also like to thank the program committee for putting together tonight's program. As always, thank you to the board of directors, to the women in front, Marjorie Hobart and Anita Nolan at the check-in desk, and George Hobart for selling the drink tickets. Thank you also to Marymount Special Events team and Arlington Independent Media's technical crew. And thank you all, and a particular thank you for Nathan Bynum for setting up tonight's inaugural webcast. As a reminder, you can catch this program and future programs, if you can't make it in, on YouTube. And of course, thanks to you for coming. If you have any thoughts about how we can improve, we'd love to hear it. I had a suggestion last week, which I will bring up at our next board meeting, so we do listen to your feedback. On your way out, please